If you go to the Metroidvania Reddit, Nine Souls is easily one of the most appreciated Metroidvanias in a long time. It tops almost every tier list alongside Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest, together with some various games depending on who is posting the list. Nine Souls is also regarded one of the harder games out there, which alone had me very excited. But how did the 2024 indie favorite hold up for me? Well, let's find out. Nine Souls is a 2D action game with some platforming and most of the Metroidvania elements present. We have the usual dash and double jump, we have charge attacks, we have bombs, we have the skill tree, and we have the beloved parry system. We have a meaty story and character development through the entire game. Although I did love this game, I think it leans more into the action adventure department than a lot of people suggest, as opposed to Metroidvania and exploration. But more on that later. First, let's talk about the plot. A long time ago, the cat-like Solarians were affected by a virus without a cure. The big brains of society, called the 10 Souls, figured they could build a virtual reality and hide from the virus in hibernation until a cure has been found. It turns out that virtual reality requires a lot of brain power, so the cat aliens started sacrificing humans, taking their heads as fuel. Alongside this, our own personal cat person Yi is betrayed and killed by his co-worker. Lucky for Yi, he has big octopus arms as friends that can rebuild him internally, so after an extensive sleep, Yi wakes up in a cute little village and the game begins. We wake up in this colorful village, and the first thing that strikes me is how pretty the game is. It truly feels handcrafted from paw to whisker, and everything oozes with charm. The so-called Tao punk, a mix of Eastern Asian style and cyberpunk, is in the front seat all the time. I found the movement very smooth, the introduction to characters were interesting, and I was quickly introduced to the lovely comic strips that Nine Souls uses to tell pieces of the story. I had never played a parry-focused game before, so obviously I got my furry tail handed to me many times in the early game. But I think I quickly picked up on the general idea. I am good with sound cues, and lucky me, there are plenty of those in Nine Souls. A lot of environmental damage worked on enemies too, which was very fun. The more creative ways to kill stuff, the better. My first session in this game ended with a mini-boss, and my second session ended with the first main boss, which both was a blast, and that pushed my skills to the limit. I got access to the unfortunately somewhat mediocre map, and got access to my hub town, where I could take breathers and vibe with the other characters in the story. So, after my second session, you could say it kinda had its claws in me. The story was intriguing, the art was awesome, combat was clean and challenging but never unfair, and it worked very well on my keyboard-only setup. During the mid-game, I started picking up quite a few gripes with the game. Nothing major, but let's get them out of the way before all the juicy stuff. So they talk a lot in Nine Souls, and it leads to a lot of reading, not very interesting dialogue that is not really pushing any story forward. And when I say not pushing any story forward, I mean the main story and why we are actually here. Simply put, there was a lot of small talk and slow character development. Our character Yi is very sassy, stubborn, stoic if you will, and feels constantly misunderstood and thinks everyone else is below him. I will not spoil any story bits regarding the character development. That part is quite good actually if you consider the whole story, which touches on many topics, or I just found it very poorly paced. From the moment I started having this feeling, it haunted the rest of my playthrough. I couldn't stand listening to the characters anymore. Going into a conversation, I figured out if it was the main story content or not, and if it was, then I read it and I paid somewhat attention. Besides that, I made sure I picked up on the general idea of the conversation and then I left it. There were also multiple times where I was completely pulled out of my exploration to chat with my cat robot friend that lives in my base. This disrupted the pacing a lot, and it happened on various occasions and never at a good time. The pace breaking is the worst here for me. Nothing kills my vibe as much as feeling I'm picking up steam and finally getting stuff done, and then hit by minutes of speech bubbles containing small talk and empty warnings. However, there are moments where I feel like they nail the storytelling, and that is during the comic book segments. These generally show what's going on with images and speech bubbles, and it works perfectly fine. I wish they would have cut out more of the dialogue and instead had more comic book segments. Potentially, it would also save some pacing, as images generally provide some more energy than texts. Regarding the various zones and biomes, I also think that a lot of areas felt very quiet and musically empty. When there were music, it was cozy, mystical, ambient, but where are all the melodies? Is my question. I really missed something to hum along to. Some boss fights had banger tracks and some areas had really cool beat-heavy industrial percussion tracks. But yeah, I think the soundtrack all in all ends up being quite lackluster. It was clearly going for a feeling instead of a good song kind of vibe, which I understand and respect, but I can also not remember any music when writing the script. I should be able to at least have one melody stuck in my head after a session, right? Although, speaking of sounds, an award to the guy who made the perfect parry sound. I can nerd out over details like this forever. That sound is like candy for my brain, and it really reinforces an addiction to land the perfect parry over and over again. Just listen to this thing. Moving on, the map can also use some love. It has no markers. It is very liberal regarding what I have explored, so often I thought I had explored a part that I had not. I found the map really annoying to navigate to. To swap between the close and overview mode, not being able to distinguish where I am exactly in the overview mode, I don't know, it felt all very thrown together for me. I think the game expects you to memorize a lot of the environments, and I think that's fine. I recently played Symphony of the Night that does not have markers either because it's old, and for some reason that worked a lot better. The zones in isolation do make a lot of sense to traverse, so in general I was able to get everything I wanted through the regular visits. When I was making sure I had everything for my true ending, I found like 3 areas to revisit, so it's definitely not a big deal. Another pet peeve, Nine Souls does a very good job at holding your hand to the point that it almost feels linear, which it actually isn't. You can do a lot of things in various orders, but it also guides you heavily with the help of the robot cat in the base, constantly keeping you up to date with the latest news. Rarely exactly what to do, but I never felt completely alone to figure it out. This made me actually not feel like exploring as much as I would have hoped, and it robs from the Metroidvania feeling for sure. I think it's a well executed guiding though, so it's not necessarily bad, it's just not my cup of tea. Lastly on my pet peeve list, and I promise this is the last, here is something I also found strange in Nine Souls. The reward system after challenging segments. Is it not a little bit weird that we get all primary abilities by being sucked into the save spots when trying to save? Then we get introduced to the ability we're getting. Then we get a tutorial segment, and then we're thrown out into the world again. So, I don't think I ever got an ability from the actual world, or by picking up an item or similar. I was so happy when I killed the imprisoned dog, and then I got a sellable item as a reward. I was very confused. In the next room, I was sucked into a save spot, and then I got an ability. So I realized in hindsight, this is my reward. But right there, I did not feel like that. Right there, it felt like I got money from the boss and I got an ability on the side. My opinion here is that you should always piggyback on the excitement of overcoming a challenge and take that opportunity to reward your player. I would also prefer if progression abilities would be rewarded via exploration rather than introducing them linearly through the save spots. I think it would open up the world a little bit more. Okay, enough whining, let's talk about what's good. What is good then? Alright, this. All the slow conversations, the ups and downs in pacing, the bland ambient music in regular zones, I take it all back as soon as I get to a new boss. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm having a hard time thinking if they could have pulled this off any better. Every boss was unique in visual and mechanical design. All had interesting ways to contribute to the story, and most importantly, they were just pure fun, a thrill to experience. They all felt perfectly balanced for where they were in the game. Early bosses were hard because I was bad. Middle bosses were hard because new mechanics had been introduced and it was up to me to integrate them into my gameplay or die. Late game tested my skills to the fullest, especially the last boss. Can I charge the sword and air parry at the same time, releasing my charged sword into a bomb dash? Can I parry left and then parry right and then dodge to avoid a blast that takes up the entire screen? These questions pops up all the time, and trying out to see for yourself is what these bosses are about. Learning the patterns, figuring out the visual and sound cues, deciding my strategies and sticking to them until they are second nature was a true joyride for me. If you are a combat junkie, you have to play these bosses, even if it means skipping literally everything else. And I'm not done yet. The bosses in Nine Souls remind me a lot of my MMO rating, where my favorite part is solving how a team of players deal with a specific boss mechanic. Just because someone else kills a boss in one way does not mean that my group will, because we are all human and we might need different strategies. This feeling was 100% here as well. All bosses had their patterns, but what solution I chose to counter a mechanic was completely up to me. Now you might say that that is any game, and sure, you can do what you want in any game. But it's common, in my opinion, that one mechanic has one solution or one boss has one gimmick. Here it was almost like a fighting game. It was a puzzle in itself to find my damage windows and squeeze in as much damage as I could. It was such a good experience to change strategies, trying different things to see what works for me without feeling like I made the boss unnecessarily hard for playing suboptimal. This culminated in my about 2 hours and 45 minutes of progression of the last boss Aegon and its true version with the true ending. I think this is the most consistent boss fight I have fought ever. It never felt random, but always mixed up at the same time. It was 10 out of 10 furballs. I love this. I will make a boss video for Nine Souls 2, going over how I strategized for each boss and my boss ranking, so stay tuned for that. Some minor but important points before we wrap up. Point 1. Skill point system was nice. I had all skills I wanted going into last boss. 2. Not having to listen to boss yapping every time you started the boss was a relief. 3. Fast traveling was weirdly implemented, unnecessarily cumbersome, but introduced at a reasonable pace. 4. Due to parrying being so dynamic, fighting easy enemies while exploring is actually surprisingly enjoyable. Usually, when you come to the end of games like this, you just run past enemies, and that didn't happen here for me. That's a good thing. Alright, so conclusion. This game is so hard for me to think about, and I will explain why. Recently I was on vacation, and with me I had my Switch. Installed on it, I found 2 games I had forgotten about. Alva's Awakening and Alva's Legacy. This is not a video about those games, but playing those games directly after Nine Souls really cemented one of my strongest opinion about it. For some reason I was constantly impressed over how the Alva games just let me go whenever I found a neat way. Whether it could be glitching, using a tricky platforming, or simply relying on the tools for exploration the games had given me. Never did I feel like the game had provided me with insufficient tools for exploration, and I was constantly rewarded for trying out new things to reach new areas. Coming from Nine Souls, where I really never felt rewarded for exploring, it was such a good feeling for me. So when I think about Nine Souls today, I simply have to see it from 2 angles at the same time. On one hand, I actually think this game is a little bit overblown. People are saying it's the second favorite Metroidvania after Hollow Knight, but at the same time I feel like they miss so many important Metroidvania parts. Exploration is kinda bland to me, zones are a bit too similar, dialogue breaks the pace, The map is not helping you explore and backtrack, and the reward structure from a boss kill into new abilities are simply not very exciting. So as a Metroidvania, I feel like they focus too much on the narrative and dialogue to fully deliver here. Don't get me wrong, the story is really cool. I just did not enjoy how they presented it and how they used that to push me forward instead of letting me explore myself. On the other hand though, let's imagine they actually never wanted to make a Metroidvania and I'm just sitting here bashing it for something it never tried to be. Let's imagine it's just a 2D action adventure with cool graphics and challenging bosses. Then take all my money, because 9 Souls is bloody brilliant. Do you want to join me on Project Metroidvania? Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, following me on Twitch and join my Discord channel. That way we can play these games together, compare and nerd out over the details they bring to the table. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you around. Bye!